Hey everybody, I just thought I'd take a little time out today to do another book review. I'm going to be doing another comic as well, so we'll get two this week. But right here, just thought I'd take a look at the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics by Freddie Williams. A little backstory on why I picked this up, excuse me, is probably about a couple months ago. I think I picked this up around Christmas time, a little bit before then, and for some reason, I was looking at people doing comic book work in Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, and in Photoshop as well. And I've played around in Photoshop trying to get, nice line work, try to mimic inks, all sorts of stuff. And personally, I found Illustrator to work really well for rendering and all this stuff. I don't want to get into that, but so I just did some digging around, and then eventually this book here came into circulation just by me clicking on certain things. Eventually, I came to it, and Freddie Williams actually has. I'll have a link in the show notes here that you can go to his YouTube channel where he does. There's some interviews he's doing, and some step throughs and walkthroughs and stuff like that. But it was a pretty cheap book. I mean, I guess in the stores, it would probably, see like $30 Canadian and $23 in the US. Actually, on Amazon, when I picked it up, I think it was like $12 or $13. So I figured, what the hell, what's the worst that's going to happen? And I can honestly say, now that I've been going through it, I've actually made the transition myself into going completely digital, at least for now. I've already had a tablet, a Wacom tablet. And again, like I said before, those are the things that I've tried to do. And there's certain things that just didn't gel, didn't feel right. Doing certain lines, always felt like I had to undo and redo a line just to get it nice and smooth. Or the rendering, the pressure sensitivity was always a little wacky. But what's really cool about this book, and I'm just going to actually go right through it with you guys, is one thing that this book does really well is it explains from start to finish what you need to know and how to get there, and some experiments along the way, okay? Right in the beginning, like, he'll tell you, this is not a how-to Photoshop book. Everything he does do digitally is done in Photoshop. I've heard of people using Manga Studio as well. I've tinkered around with it, but I haven't given it a proper run-through, so I don't know, necessarily what's better. But it's more of a preference and a comfort thing. But what he does is you have to have the assumption that you at least know Photoshop. You understand it. You've messed around in Photoshop. You've maybe painted. You maybe try to do some line work. You understand paths. And really just brush settings. I think that's all you really need to know. And then you'll go from there. So like Chapter 1 is just all about, how he started and why he went to doing digital. The second one is he starts to ask, why even do it? Why would you go digital? And he starts to show you some pros, and then he'll definitely hit the cons. This is one thing here that I really enjoy, is pros of working digitally, references and script at your fingertips. Now, this is going to be pretty hard to see here. Let me just see if it'll actually show up. He doesn't, but if I can zoom in here to show you the layers that he's working with, I don't really think you can see that, but basically he has them all in groups here, okay? So there's the template for the page, reference, which, you could go on Google, anywhere, and grab your reference and basically make a giant document within the Photoshop document that you can pull up and adjust whenever you need it, which is actually, I find, beneficial more than having like very rarely I got reference in forms of printing them out and put them in binders and stuff, but I've heard lots of people do that, and that's totally cool. What I like to do is either save it on my computer, or I just go out and I'll buy like a muscle magazine or a surfing magazine or National Geographic to get like maybe old people, so you can get the wrinkles and stuff like that. To actually have a physical copy that I can use. But the problem with that is I've accumulated quite a volume myself. Nothing epic. I know people have like libraries full, but it's to the point now where it's kind of like, I don't even want to grab the reference because I know it's, in there somewhere. It's going to take me all this time to find it, and that's a personal preference. And I know, especially in today, Google and image searches and stuff, you can just find things that you need roughly quickly and just drag it and save it in there. But what's really cool is he shows you this one thing that you can do with the script, okay? And for each page, there's a text document that you can paste in there, and it's a script for that page. It works really well for comic books. And you can always just click the eyeball to turn that layer off, so the script is right there. And, arguably, if you're going to do this traditionally, like I've always done, and a lot of people do, you'll have the script beside you that you've printed out anyway, but this saves you some paper time. and all that other stuff. One thing that he definitely talks about is with layers, you can experiment more. You can always add a new layer, turn a layer off just to see things. You can tweak and resize forever. Much less scanning. There's no light boxing to speak of. It gives you cleaner, precise files. I don't really care too much about that. And what's really cool here, and I'm not sure about this one either, but you can reuse backgrounds easily, and you can move characters around. Moving the characters around, I apologize because I know you guys probably won't be able to see as much as I wish you could here, but the fact that you can move characters around so easily and adjust them. So I've been in many situations where I finished a page and I'm like, oh man, that hand looks a little off. If you're doing digital, you can just go in there and adjust it rather quickly. It's not effortlessly, but it's a lot simpler than, erasing an entire rendered drawing or maybe touching the whole thing up in Photoshop after you've inked it and stuff. Some cons he definitely talks about is the upfront cost is higher. Absolutely. You're going to need a tablet, whether it's a cheap Bamboo or otherwise. It doesn't really matter, especially with this, because the pressure sensitivity is not. You're not digitally painting. Okay. Most of the brushes that he uses are a 3-pixel brush, hard edge brush with no pressure sensitivity, and the idea for that is to create a line work. And I'll go into that once we get some of these chapters, but I want to speed this up because I'm on page 17 of this 140-page book, and I don't even know if I'll get through it. But and then the other one is the actual pressure-sensitive brush, which uses around 9 pixels for inking. So you can get that line weight. But most of the time you use a lasso tool, and with a mouse you'll probably kill your hand doing stuff like that. Some other ones, you can lose a lot of data because of hard drive crashes and computer viruses. Big no-no there. And you don't have any originals to sell, but he actually comes up with a really cool way for you to come up with things like that. So chapter 3, he starts going into all the tools you'll need, or that he uses, talking about backing up. This guy actually backs up quite a bit, and I'm getting in the habit myself of backing up daily of what I've worked on. And then when you're done a project, you can burn it to a DVD, and then you can batch projects onto another DVD, and if you want, you can do an external hard drive as well. And then he starts getting started in Photoshop. And what he's doing here is he's just briefly going over some of the things in Photoshop, like layers, channels. Again, this isn't a how-to Photoshop book at all. He's just getting you fresh, getting you interested in what we're going to be going through in the entire book. The path palette, which is really cool. In this case, he's got the Superman symbol. And all he's done is he grabbed the pen tool, made a quick path of it. And I just learned how to do paths really in Photoshop through this book. And once you have that path, you can save it. And every time you're drawing, in this case, Superman, you can just warp the path to be any kind of contour that Superman's body would be. Let's see if I can show you guys a little bit there. So that, right there on the left, that would be like your path. And then you distort it with some perspective. And then right there, he'd warp it. And you could already see in your mind's eye, Superman with his chest out there. And he's got the big super symbol. And then all you do is you just stroke the path with a brush and move on. You've got infinite brushes that you could use, and arguably, it takes some finesse to work with a lot of that stuff. Actions are a big thing. But yeah, so here he starts talking about the different workflows, and let me see, hopefully I can show you guys this a little bit. I know that glare, I apologize. So if you're going to do it all on the computer, you start with digital roughs, going to digital wireframes, which would be a tight line work stage, and then digital inks, which are pretty self-explanatory. But what he also covers in this book, which is really cool, is in between the digital roughs and the digital wireframes, if you just went to the roughs, printed the roughs out in a light blue, then you could pencil over top of that and basically ink if you wanted to. Now what's really cool about this is it actually defeats the point of using a light box altogether. Arguably, you might need a bigger printer to print these 11 by 17 sheets, but if you could piece together Bristol and stuff in Photoshop, especially nowadays, it's no big deal. But being able to print without lightboxing, personally, I hate lightboxing. Anybody that's been following me for a while, especially on my Live Scribbles with Jonathan show, I hate lightboxing, and most of it is probably because of the size of the lightbox I have. I'm fortunate that it was free, but it's a kind of a bitch to set up. But I have used it, and I mean, I'm not the only guy that uses lightboxing. And if you prefer lightboxing, then this might not be your thing, which is fine. And then the other method here would be going from digital wireframes, which would be your tight line work, and printing that out. Okay, so you have that nice black line, and then you just ink over top. Now, the reason you would do something like this, or this, really, is let's say you did, for example, let's say you're working on Batman, and this is the example Freddie gives you. People buying art is actually a pretty big market. You can get quite a bit of money from that if you have a name, and your people are actively looking for your work. But if you're working totally on the computer, people can't buy original art. Well, Eddie's little workaround for this is he would do the tight line work in Photoshop, print that out, and then ink over top of it, so now you have an actual piece that you can sell. And he goes into talking about trying to keep the quality up so it matches the rest of the book when you're doing that. But yeah, and he starts breaking down all the individual stages here really quickly, which will be covered in different topics. And here you go. He's just showing you printing it out in blue line, penciling over top. I've tried this. It works really well. But I'm not a big fan of penciling over blue lines that I can't erase. And here he actually goes through a digital workflow exercise, okay? So he shows you roughly, this is essentially how you do the comics here, okay? So you make a quick sketch layer. This would be like a layout. And then he shows you how you make a layer over top of that, which basically turns any black line that you've made on previous layers into a nice light blue. Then in the next stage, he tightens it up, again with the same brush. And you can keep adding blue and adding line work as much as you want until you start to feel a little comfortable. Now that it's all done, he gets a nice tight line. You guys can't really see that. And then he'll add a contour / line weight, and then bring up the inks, and then he'll start inking it up. And you really can't see that there. But so you got that, and then he starts talking about a lot of the stuff, talking about master pages, digital roughs. And I mean, I think I've gone through quite a bit. He even talks about how you can work from pencils, scanning in, like what I was saying earlier. Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to keep dragging it on or anything like that. But would I recommend this book? Is this a good book? Personally, I'm trying going 100% digital, at least for now, like I started off saying. This book has helped me leaps and bounds. It's clearly gotten me on the right track. If there's one thing that I will say for anything, is not that you necessarily have to buy the book, but if you go to Freddie Williams' site, I found his email there, and I've emailed him probably more times than he'd like, maybe at least 10 times, asking about questions that maybe I wasn't too clear about in the book, or just things that I'm trying to experiment with in Photoshop. And he's gotten back to me relatively quickly, and I mean, that's a classy guy. It's pretty hard to find a lot of people that got the time, especially busy people that can do it. And I don't know him personally, but he sounds like he's a really cool guy. I think this is a very beginner entry book. It does teach you what you need to know, what you'll want to know, but it also starts giving you questions to ask yourself. Is this something for you? But even the little experiments that he gets you going in here, you can quickly start to see how you could ramp this up. Now, I'm not saying once you read this book, you're going to be able to just boom jump into digital comics. You might be able to. Personally, I'm not. I'm still learning quite a bit. But I'm having a blast doing so, and I like a lot of the immediacy from working digitally. Things like, I no longer need paper anymore. Everything I need to do is right on the computer, which could be a plus or a minus, depending how you look at it. There's a lot of bonuses, a lot of negatives. Perspective work is a lot easier. Moving characters around, adjusting things is much easier. One thing that does kind of suck is you have to zoom in so close sometimes to get the nice line work, but I've recently myself purchased a second monitor, which is totally optional, so that I could have on the other screen a zoomed out version of the picture I'm working on while I'm zoomed in on the other monitor. So while I'm in there looking at the detail, I just need to turn my head and I can see the whole page as it is. And I mean, that's a trick. I know a lot of people in the industry that do concept art and digital painting, stuff like that. They do a lot of that as well. But all in all, I would say if this topic right here, digitally drawing comics, if it even tickles your fancy at all, if you're interested, I highly recommend this book. I think it's a fantastic book. I think it's one of the better books on a specific topic that personally I've picked up. I'm really anxious to see where this goes, how far this can go. People talk a lot about SketchUp nowadays, using SketchUp and stuff, and there's even ways that you can convert easily. The Path tool. I think you have to purchase the SketchUp in order to do that, but working in perspective, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that will go out there, and I used to be one of them that would say a lot of this is cheating, but when you really think about it, all that matters is are you telling a good story? Does it matter the tools that you take to get there? I don't think so. I think as artists we should be experimenting with different things anyway, but I do want to put one final highlight on this. Besides, I highly recommend the book, like I've said, but the big thing I do want to get as a takeaway for this is I really hope especially new artists that are getting into comics or otherwise, that they don't use the digital method as a crutch. And what I mean by that is things like SketchUp can make perspective insanely easy. You print it out, you lightbox it, you're done. Okay, and when you're saving time, when you're trying to save time, you got deadlines to hit, or if you're just playing around with it, I mean, cool stuff. But the one fear I think I have is a lot of artists might start skipping around a bit, and they won't learn the fundamentals. And by saying that, I think if you don't have a basic foundation in art, or maybe you're just getting used to drawing characters in 3D space. Maybe you're just drawing characters front on and from the side and 3/4, and you're struggling with that, but you're kind of getting through it. This might be a little too much. But maybe you're doing like a three strip comic that's 3 panels that's got a gag at the end. This might be able to help you out. But again, it's so back and forth with this that it's definitely do your research for the book. But if it is a topic you're interested in, I would highly check it out. Thumbs up. I definitely would pick this book up again if you're interested in it. And that's the DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics by Freddie Williams. And I hope you guys enjoyed the review. And maybe you'll check it out. And we'll check you next time. Take care.